Good morning, everyone. It's a Sunday, and it's time for our monthly eye to eye conversations about improv. I'm Gabe Mercado, and every month or so, we have conversations like this about the art and the discipline of improvisation. And today, I'm absolutely excited for the episode today. Today's episode is called Improv is Good for You. And we have with us people who practice improvisation, people who are fans of improvisation, who are from the medical field. And for the next hour, we're going to have conversations with them. All about improvisation and how it intersects with their own practice and with their own lives. For Eye to Eye, episode 3, Improv is Good for You. The doctor is definitely in. So let's meet today's guests. Our first guest is Rob. Rob Sarmiento just graduated from adult neurology residency in 2020, serving his last year as chief resident battling COVID in one of the biggest specialty and referral centers in the country. He's looking forward to another graduation very soon as he is part of Third World Improv, where he is in his last level right now, level 5 with Almost Friends. Let's welcome our neurologist, Dr. Rob Sarmiento. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Gabe. It's a beautiful Sunday, everybody. I'm glad to be here.
And I forgot to mention pala, one more thing about Rob. Magkaklase kami ni Rob together with the next guest in North Coast Improv's Level 1 freestyle rap class. So I'm just hinting that if there is enough demand in the chat, maybe we can be convinced to rap a little later on. So, Rob, delighted to have you. Excited to hear about your experiences about improv and the neurologist's perspective.
Okay. Yeah, glad to be here, Gabe.
Okay, our next guest is a gastroenterologist based in Pagsanghan. He is a classmate of Doc Rob in Level 5 Almost Friends. And during the pandemic, he and another alumnus from Third World Improv, Doc Toto Karandang, they put together something called Play MD. Now, to tell us a little bit about Play MD, we have Dr. Allyn Lomboy. Hey, Alan.
Hi, Gabe. Thank you for having us. Actually, I was laughing nervously kanina when you brought up our our rap class. Oh no. Yeah. But sige, Gabe. Yes, and Gabe.
So, Alan, what's Play MD?
Oh yeah. Play MD is something that Toto and I came up with sometime in the middle of the first surge of COVID last year when doctors were asking for a timeout because of the sudden increase in cases. So initially we thought, why don't we just play some improv games with our doctor friends? And then while we were doing that, it kind of snowballed because these friends started referring us to other institutions. And then later on, it became a referral system based activity. So now we've been doing it for a lot of groups of healthcare workers, basically.
That's wonderful, and I'm sure we'll have more questions about that later. And finally, our last guest. She's a good friend, and together we've actually done talks on the intersection of improv and how it can be good for you. She is a clinical psychologist and is also an associate professor of the Department of Psychology in UP Diliman. Let's welcome Dr. Anna Tuazon. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Gabe, and hi, everyone. I'm looking forward to hearing the rap that might happen later on.
So yun na, may demand na talaga. I will
I'll
start
be the
looking for
first to
beats.
request.
Dapat ano, talagang medical terms yung gagawin natin sa rap natin para ano, para we can
Stat.
talk from we can talk from a place of expertise. I think my first question for everyone is, when did you first hear about improv, and what was your initial impression about improv?
I'll start na lang. Uh, Back in 2013, one of Arian's friends, who is now an obstetrician gynecologist, hi Pam Valera, invited our med school classmates to one of the gigs of Spit in Sev's Cafe. And I was browsing through my Instagram photos and I saw a little bit of Gabe in the corner. A little bit of Arian, a little bit of Ariel and Monica, and Chester was there doing tech. And I was really I really liked the format, and I was just bewildered how everything was done on the spot. And in my Instagram post, I posted there, maybe a must try after med school. So, sabi ko, parang napaka telling nung time na yon. And when I learned about Third World Improv and the same people that were handling it, sabi ko maybe it's about time to relieve one passion, and that's why I'm here right now.
How about Allyn?
Yeah, well, I first found out about improv basically from Toto also because his TWE group had a show in Manila, 6 p.m. They had a show, so he invited me to watch, and then they did a long form. It was a Harold, and I remember after the show, I think my jaw was on the floor, and I was thinking, what happened? How is it possible that they did that without any rehearsals, without any script? So I started watching shows after that, and then I think it was in 2019 when he told me, "Oh, there are teaser classes being put on by Third World Improv." So I thought, well, why not? No commitment. It's just a teaser class. And then after the teaser class, I was hooked. So I enrolled for the TWE classes. And at the time when I started classes, actually, I'm still here in Pangasinan. So I would travel to Manila just for the
Oh
classes and
my
then come
goodness.
home right away. Yeah. So I would usually leave Pangasinan at around 12 noon, get to Manila around 4 or 5 because our classes were 7 to 10. And then after that,
Yeah.
I would come home. So I'd usually get home at around 1 or 2 a.m.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that's how
That's
much I love it.
dedication right there. Wow. So Anna, unlike Rob and Allyn, isn't with Third World Improv, but you've been familiar with improv. What was your first encounter with improv, Anna?
Yeah. So actually, Gabe Gabe was the sole connection to improv. If you remember, I was working in a clinic with other
Yes.
colleagues, with other psychologists, and one of our colleagues actually brought Gabe in for one of our self-care activities, a psychologist, and he actually facilitated some games and some activities for us. And I think from there, simply, right? Like, that's it. Everything I know about improv is through Gabe. So if I get it wrong, you know where it came from.
Akala ko you encountered it also in the US when you were based there, but not so much, I
Mm,
guess. No?
no, no. I mean, I've heard of like the comedy shows for sure, but I didn't have time, unfortunately, to really get into it.
Right. Oo, and immediately may fan ka na dito. I love
Oh,
Doc
hi, Jackie.
Anna and her show because Doc Anna actually has a show over GMA News. Tama ba? I don't
GMA
even know
News
how.
Online.
Right, there you go. So she actually uh, tackles different mental health and wellness questions there in her show. So, is there a benefit to improv? Um, from I think I direct this to Doc Rob, the neurologist, to talk about it from a neurologist's point of view, and then let's go to Doc Anna after to talk about it from the point of view of the psyche. What is improv and what happens in the brain?
So well, one thing about improv, um, I'll go to the nerdy part right now, no? Well,
I
because
love it.
syempre, everything should have a basis, right? Di ba?
Yeah.
And dapat dapat laging may backed up by research and
Yes.
no to fake news.
Yes.
When I suddenly found myself like getting hooked into this improv thing, I told myself maybe I have to also research what's really happening on the brain. And I found out that there are a lot of people just like me who are huge nerds and does a lot of research about improv, and they found out that it's really beneficial to an extent because there are no big studies like the class A or the randomized control trials. They're not available, unfortunately. But there are some evidence how these people or these scientists, which are also improvisers, tend to map which parts of the brain are working during improvisation. How one person develops being in the moment, and how one person has to silence the inner critic, and also just practice empathy and reading the emotions of the scene partners. And in that way, I think improv becomes very instrumental to also get to know our scene partners better, and me as a doctor also get to know my patients and colleagues better. So I think that's, in a way, it's really helpful.
All right,
For
nakamute
this,
pala ako. Yes, go ahead,
for
Anne.
the psychological part, I mean, definitely, I think the practice of improv, right, doing it, diba, it kind of, from what I've seen and observed, and when I say observe, na N of one, Gabe. um, so is that definitely right? It requires adaptability. It forces you to stay focused in the present, right? You can't pre-plan for too long. You can't get attached to the plan, to whatever plan you have. So from a mindfulness standpoint, there is a skill in mindfulness that's called participate. Can you fully participate, diba? Without second guessing, without skepticism, etc. And I think improv is such a fun, good way of practicing that mindfulness skill. And Dr. Rob, I wonder, I'm sure there's a connection with nervous system and neurology in terms of cognitive flexibility, right? Like shifting mindset when the scene suddenly changes. And you're like, oh, here we are, there we are, right? And so
Yeah.
the ability to shift set, right? Cognitive set is very important. That's something we measure when we measure cognitive functioning, for example. So definitely, parang I think, yeah, like improv really help you master, practice, hone those cognitive skills that will actually. These are the things we do to sort of help. Not completely, but of course, right, help sort of prevent us from forms of cognitive impairment, right? Like dementia and Alzheimer's, right? Like we always say, sort of learn new things, always learning new things. Improv, I think, tama ba? It's never rote. It's never the same
Yeah.
thing
Never.
over and over again. So
Yeah.
it's the perfect, because I used to work with dementia clients. So it's the perfect exercise, right? To sort of
Yeah.
exercise those parts of the brain that maybe as adults, right, if they don't get an opportunity to learn new things, definitely improv will help with that.
Yeah. I have to agree on what Dr. Anna said because when some of the improvisers, one study showed like they got six improvisers, put those six improvisers in a functional MRI, and the functional MRI is basically like a big camera which measures the blood flow and checks which parts of the brain highlights whenever one improvises. And then they found out that there's a neuroanatomical substrate or a neurological structure which is in charge of that, and that's the prefrontal cortex. And they said that when these structures are highlighted, one person practices how to be in the moment more, how can they shift from one scene to another. And of course, it's not as easy as that, no? Emotions also come in, the amygdala comes in, the limbic system comes in, the memories comes in, and then that's when the personal truths of the improviser show. So in a way, it's really geeky talking about these
I love
structures,
it. I love it.
but yes, sabi ko nung when I was reading it, sabi ko, and grabe na published siya, and it's a peer reviewed journal. So it's really there's also a science to this art form, and if we have more research on how we can apply these to patients, I think it's a very good idea to help these patients and the future patients at that.
I'm already getting what I wanted in this conversation because I was really so thrilled at the thought of a neurologist and a psychologist in the same space na parang talking about improv na parang ang analogy ko, which might not be perfect, is the neurologist is the hardware of the brain, while the software of the brain is the psychologist, and just understanding it in a more holistic way is such a thrill for me and I'm just an improviser. See, Doc Allen is actually putting a lot of this into play with Play MD, and actually applying it to medical professionals. So you explained it. So you, during the first half of the pandemic, you did this for healthcare workers. And what did you discover, and how did they respond to playing improv games?
Right. Actually, that's one of the benefits I think also of improv in the healthcare setting. Apparently, it's also helpful not just for the patients, but even for the healthcare providers. Because at the time that we started doing this, there was a lot. There were very high levels of anxiety among the healthcare workers because there was always that fear of getting the infection yourself, or when you come home and then you might bring the virus home. So there were very high levels of anxiety, and actually just like Rob, we've also been looking at studies before, but this time related to benefits of improv on anxiety. And it's been seen that practicing improv also helps control the levels of anxiety because, same with what has been mentioned already, the principles of being in the moment, letting go, and accepting what is given to you and making the most of what was given, treating everything as a gift. These interventions can actually also help with managing anxiety. So, as we've been doing this with more and more groups, we found that even the simplest and the silliest games in improv actually makes an impact on the participants. And
What,
we
what's an
sort of,
ex- what's an
yeah,
example and a story about a simple, silly game that
yeah, right.
people responded to well?
Well, usually we start with warm ups because most healthcare workers actually have no idea what improv is, or they only know what they've seen from Whose Line Is It Anyway. So we usually start with the warm up where we just do the poser activity where you're just doing poses and then passing it along.
Yeah.
And yeah, that usually helps them get out of their shells because usually doctors, when they're in a Zoom webinar, they're usually stiff and scientific. So that actually helps to break the ice. Yeah, so then they start to become comfortable with looking silly. And then later on, as we progress with the games, then they become more comfortable. And one game that has received good feedback is actually Fortunately, Unfortunately, where you create a
Okay.
story, but yeah, the sentences have to alternate between fortunately and unfortunately. And I think they enjoyed the concept of building a story together. And parang yung, we call it yung gaguhan with care in improv na yung nagsabi ng unfortunately, you sort of present a stumbling block and then the next person has to get over it. So it really enhances their ability to say yes and be in the moment. So they find those things to be really fun, but at the same time, it also seems to help them now to see the current situation in a different light. Na okay, here are some things that we can do. It's not just helplessness all the way. We can actually help manage our own anxieties also. So yun yung mga nakuha namin. Yeah. Oh, and also
From,
just I
yeah,
just wanted to
go
ask.
ahead.
I actually not ask, just share with Sina Dr. Anna din na one of the things that we found out because we've also asked for feedback from the participants after, and apparently among healthcare workers, most of them have not had even an exposure to mental health resources, even here in the provinces and even in Manila. So the few that have received some, of course, they would usually be seen by psychiatrists, but um, it seems to be not enough anymore because even the psychiatrists themselves have shared that they're also running out of intervention. So maybe improv might be a way because it seems to be a rich, untapped resource for mental health and wellness also. So yeah.
So yeah, thank you, Alan. So what's happening, Anna, when people actually go through exercises like that, where they're presented stumbling blocks, and are starting to get comfortable being silly, what's happening on the level of the self when people go through exercises like that?
Mm. The way Dr. Allen described, the activities and the
Yeah.
games and even the feedback of the healthcare workers. Because if you think about it, everything you're doing in the context of improv is something that happens in life, and particularly for healthcare workers, right? How we're dealing with the pandemic, how we're dealing with infectious disease, and all that. But it's the same, right? It's the same. Like you're given stumbling blocks all over the place. You're trying to figure out how to pivot, right, from one unexpected factor over another. So yeah, so I think, in terms of what's happening is that when you think about it in terms of your job, right, there are stumbling blocks in your job as well. There are unexpected factors. You have to go along with rule policy changes, whether you like it or not. However, in real life, it doesn't feel playful, right? Because you just feel the stakes so
Yeah.
much. Literally, it's do or die sometimes. However, what improv does is that it gives people, or I think it gives people a really safe space. So we call this sort of the sandbox, right? Like in this place, you can make mistakes. No one's gonna die if you make a mistake, right? Like, because that's so, that's fair in life. So it's a safe space, is what improv is, and they can really experiment, play with these skills, and master these skills in a very safe, non-judgmental, manner. I think the sillier better in a way, because it removes them from the high stakes of life. And then once they get that confidence and then what we call self-efficacy, so parang, wow, kaya ko pala. Kahit anong problema, kaya ko. Kahit anong unfortunately, magagawan ko ng diskarte, right? Then hopefully.
Okay, we seem to
And if you'd
have.
like to
Okay,
intervention,
there. Sorry,
yes,
there
if
was a
you'd like
little
to
bit of a
consider
glitch.
therapeutic. I see. Okay. Yeah, so Dr. Allen, if you want to do it that way, you just need to generalize what they learned within improv and see how that translates to now how they see work and how they can sort of, mentally get a handle on the challenges at work. So definitely may malaking potential.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll just share this a little bit. If you share the stream, you can get a chance to win a spot into in our intro to improv workshop. Set the
Yeah.
post to public, share eye to eye. But as you were saying that, Doc Anna, one of the things that I remembered when a few years back when we were talking about when I learned about yes and thinking. In improvisation, we're governed by the law, the rule of yes and, where we work with our scene partners, where we accept what they give us and we build on it. Um, it's also called greenhouse thinking, where we really nurture the ideas in front of us that we have. The opposite of greenhouse thinking, which is also good which is also good and must be used in certain situations, is actually called emergency room thinking. And emergency room thinking is, it goes that the emergency room doctor must rely on his education, experience, and expertise to make quick, decisive decisions and not go around to his nurses and say, oh, so tingin nyo, ganito ba yung treatment dito sa accident, sa trauma? And to go yes and with that. That would be the totally wrong usage of yes and thinking, collaborative thinking, and an emergency room. And when that was first presented to me, the difference between yes and emergency room thinking, what I liked was that it was both valued very, very equally. You have to be adept at both. Otherwise, you can get into life-threatening situations as mag-ESN ka, para kang gago nun, and you can actually kill somebody with that. Um, as well as sometimes when you are a chief executive of a big corporation, you are the leader of a nation, you can't be yes and all the time. There are some situations where you have to practice emergency room thinking. So I that's my long-winded way of sort of asking, as doctors, how has yes and thinking, particularly for Rob and Allyn, how has that changed some of your practice? And when do you make the judgment to shift between yes and thinking and emergency room thinking?
Sige, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead,
I
Allyn.
think
Yeah,
sorry. So for specifically for yes and in general the principles that we employ in improv, I think it really helps a lot with relating to the patient,
right.
especially when we're doing the interview, because as we've been taught in med school, the diagnosis is really mostly you get it from the interview and also from the physical exam. So if you're going to conduct a good history and physical exam, you actually have to have a good connection with the patient also. You have to make them feel safe in that space so that they are willing to share information, and then from there you arrive at a good diagnosis. Probably for me, I think the emergency room thinking aspect will come into play when you're starting to outline the plan of management for the patient, because of course your specialty has to be utilized fully when you're planning the diagnostics and the treatment plan. But even then, when you're planning the laboratories and planning what medicines to give, you're still in collaboration with the patient, because at least sa generation namin ni Rob, that's what we've been taught in med school, na patient care is collaborative. It's not just the doctor dictating everything. The patient has to be in the center basically. So I think overall, yes, and the listening skills that we've taken from improv definitely helped us perform our duties well.
Yeah, I have to second Allyn on that one. When we do history, like that's the interview part, no? You'll see some doctors, we won't name them, di ba? May lagnat ka? O, sakit na ulo? O, sumasakit ang tiyan? O, yung kasukasuan mo sumasakit? Di ka makahinga? Sometimes, sometimes the practice of medicine becomes like a checklist, no? But we were taught, and also improv taught us that sometimes you just have to listen. And the non-verbal cues are very important. So what I tried before, and I'm trying right now, Gabe, for example, I always repeat the last sentence, what my patient said. So for example,
Okay.
masakit po yung ulo ko. Masakit yung ulo mo? Opo. 5 taon na po sumasakit sa kanan. Sa kanan ho? Opo, sa kanan. Tapos minsan po pupunta sa kaliwa. You don't put answers into their mouths. And sometimes,
I see.
the story unfolds right in front of you. And that's how I kind of yes and my patients. And in that way, the patient also thinks that they're being listened to. And that also pave a way for you to make a very good and comprehensive physical examination and plan with the patient. Uh, what I also like that, so, and in terms of emergency room thinking, I think I was in level 2, level 3, and syempre, di ba, you ask for a prompt, tapos sa improv show, you ask for a prompt, tapos you work on that prompt. Sometimes, ginamit ko siya sa ER thinking ko eh. I'm holding the ER phone, or my junior is holding ER phone, at sa loob-loob ko, anong next prompt natin? May tatawag ng ER physician. Oh, we have a patient po, left-sided weakness. Left-sided weakness. That's our prompt for today. Pupunta tayo dun sa patient and we're gonna work on left-sided weakness. And this patient can have a stroke, can have a mass, can have a spinal cord problem, and just by interviewing them, you get to see the story in front of you. So, ayun, I think empathy is a very big tool. Active listening is another one. And also, if this is true, what else is true? That's all. It also
Mm.
comes and plays a big part. Bakit hindi po naiinom yung gamot po para sa seizure ng pasyente? Wala pong pera. If wala siyang pera, kaya pala wala rin siyang pambili ng food. Kaya pala hindi siya nakaka-follow up. Kaya pala, so those things also parang highlighted, wow, improv is also teaching me these things and also helping with my profession.
It's helping you break out of that checklist sort of thinking, no?
Yeah, true.
Oh, what's happening here, Doc Anna, with the way they're doing their consult from a person who listens for a living? What's their approach like?
Um, no, actually, because it's the first time that I heard about the difference between what you said, the greenhouse thinking versus
Yeah.
emergency room thinking. And I was actually thinking, I don't necessarily think that, as they said, that there's no room for yes and thinking, even in an emergency room. Because I'm actually
Okay.
working with emergency medicine doctors now and in our research,
Okay.
and we go about disaster sites and we do this. It's
Yes.
just that maybe I don't know if I got that yes and
Yeah.
concept correctly. Please do correct me. You just have to do it very, very, very fast. That's just what it is with emergency room, because you're still, when you're in an emergency setting, you have to accept reality so fast. You can't say, but it's not supposed to be like that. But why don't we have enough ambulances? Why don't we have enough beds? The whys, right? Which is the opposite. But why not? Why don't we have it? That has, diba? That does not help in an emergency setting. So if you think about it, yes, and it's just so rapid and accelerated in an
Yeah.
emergency room. And it still requires, di ba? Sabi mo nga, left side, wait, meron palang ganitong factor. And then you suddenly, right, build a better diagnosis, and so that still requires parang your yes ending with reality as it's presented to you in
Yeah.
every second. And the change in status, bilang, hala, breathing, breathing issues, boom. And then you switch scene. Suddenly, right? It's a different code. So I would actually kind of challenge that, no? That there's time when that's not helpful. You just have to learn, like
Yeah.
how to do it fast. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just the experience. And I agree with you with the challenge. It's just that for many of us, it takes years and multiple levels to get to that lightning quick yes ending. And but I'm absolutely sure, and my experience is only from being in the emergency room and watching hospital dramas, that maybe with a well-honed team, you can also achieve what improvisers have, na magkatinginan lang sila ng team nila, alam na nila ang gagawin without the need to disagree or argue, etc. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it is. It's just that yun nga for many of us, the experience of Yes and is still a deliberative, a little bit not lightning quick process as well. We've got lots of comments so far, mostly mga great comments. Really enjoying the insights um, in the session. Magaling daw yung insight na hindi lang business as usual. And also, they're really appreciating how healthcare, um, how it's really highlighted on how improvisation can really be applied to healthcare. At syempre si Ariel nag-comment. And wala namang kwenta ang comment niya, pero in-highlight ko siya dahil siya si Ariel. So, when we're talking about particular benefits to you as a person, as a practitioner, and again, mostly for Rob and Allyn, how have you changed from, or how have people said that you've changed as a practitioner, as a person after you took improvisation? And this was actually big because the last episode we did was with business people, and it was really really funny when we were talking to executives, etc. Parang ang comment ng team ni isang itatawag na lang natin si John, ang comment ng mga team niya was, wow, parang bumait na kayo after you took improv. Was there any comments from your team, from people you work with, of any changes in you after taking improv?
Sige, I'll start na lang for this one. For me naman, sabi nila mas relaxed ako. And I think Kasi before, parang, ang dami mong kailangan gawin eh. And I always tell them, my junior residents, that as a doctor, some people think na you're just doing healthcare, you're just doing treating patients, but deep inside there's a lot of work to be done. But when I took improv, I learned how to just go with the flow and just be in the moment, accomplish one task at a time. And at the same time, while doing those things, I became more empathic to the people around me. Lagi ko iniisip, how can I help them? How can I help you? How can I make you look good? And and that's the joy in it eh. Parang I also see myself na being more in the moment and not just overthinking and thinking of the problems that are not yet existing. So that's for me.
Thanks, Rob. Allyn?
Yes. On a personal level, I think the most common comment that I get from my colleagues is that I seem to have grown down in self-confidence. It apparently it's quite obvious na parang I don't look like I'm second guessing myself too much anymore. And I think this comes from the safe space that is created when we're in an improv class where you're taught na what you have to offer is valuable and everything you share is a gift. And this actually also translated later on into how I deal with the rest of the medical team. Although of course even from med school and training, you're always told na everyone on the healthcare team is a valuable member of the team. But then you start to appreciate that more when you think that yes, this person on the team, the nurse, the med tech, even the institutional workers, the ones who bring the patients to and from different locations, they all have something valuable to give, and without them, the team will not work well. I think those are the things that I began to appreciate more as I was doing improv, and I think it definitely helped me do the job better, and also, like Rob, made me more relaxed because the patient care is not just on my shoulders alone. We are a team, and we're all pitching in to do the work.
Wonderful. From what you're hearing, Dr. Anna, if, and I guess I really want to make this clear before I ask the question, and we're very firm on this in Third World Improv. Improv is never a replacement for therapy. Always continue with therapy if you need it. Always continue with your meds to manage any issues that you might have. Improv is not medicine, but it can help. So, having phrased it that way, um, if you could recommend this to people, what kinds of people do you think would benefit from taking an improv course, Doc Anna?
Mm, but suddenly, a very specific subset of people came to my head. And I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah.
People post heart attack and post stroke. Only
Oh,
because,
why?
oh, no,
Hmm.
yeah, sorry, random. And maybe the doctors can maybe tell me if I don't know where that intuition came from. Because especially post heart attack, because usually they are, di ba, parang what we call type A personalities, right? People who are
Oh
very high
gosh.
stress, like working a lot. Because like, we did have a program back then in the hospital for post heart attacks and how to get them to just relax and let go and right like not be so but my work right they're still in the hospital but they're no my work Shh, stop with the work right and so sorry very very specific but not unique to them but you can imagine right people who are very very anxious very afraid to make mistakes very people who are very concerned about what other people think yung mga ganon ba so if they have those yeah, if they have those sort of issues, then I think, especially low self worth, I think Dr. Allen was talking about confidence. It's definitely such a confidence booster, right? If you find something that you can, succeed, hindi nga succeed, right? See, that's even a type A
Yeah. Yeah.
frame of thinking. If you can just be, nga, like play in the playground. For people who cannot play in the playground, it's like, ew, what's that? what medal do I get, right? Those kinds of people,
Right.
I think, will definitely benefit a lot from an improv setting.
Because when I think of stereotypical type A people and I think about how they play, um, baka golf pa nga yan. And some people can make golf very stressful, even if it's intrinsically a relaxing game. Maaaring mangyari yun. And just to share, and they know this, and it's acknowledged community wide. The last class I handled in person was Carambola. I handled them from level 1 to level 5. And they are famous in the Twi community as being all level 5. All type A personalities.
Mm.
And their love language is Excel spreadsheets. Parang ganon. That's how they like to communicate with with each other. And
If
you know,
I
it
may,
was a wonderful journey. So it was a wonderful journey seeing them let go through the levels. Grabe. Go ahead, Rob.
yeah, since Dr. Anna mentioned post-stroke patients, yeah, I also rotated in neuro rehab. So, and I handled patients who had strokes. Well, if we're going to see the spectrum of stroke patients, some of them can just have what they call hemiparesis, or a very
Yeah.
weak part, one-sided weakness. But they can also be as bad as being bedbound and being for the rest of their lives. When I saw a patient one time when I was rotating in neuro rehab, I saw these patients whose language centers were affected by the stroke. So they couldn't speak. And then I saw how the speech pathologists tried to regain their function. And so ang ginagawa nila, one of the things that they say, so for example, tatay, pagpasok mo sa bahay, ang una mong makikita ay yung, and then magsa-start yung patient mag-isip kung ano yung ba yung nakita niya. Incidentally, that week, during our improv class, we had noun or never.
Now or never. Yeah.
So, we were making scenes, and pagpunta ko sa bahay, ang una ko makikita ay, you get the suggestion. And sabi ko, nung sa rehab therapy, parang, am I in a neuro rehab session or an improv session? And then you see the congruency of the techniques and how they try to activate certain parts of the brain during the therapy session.
Ang ganda. Parang I don't think I've ever come across that. Am I in a neuro rehab session or am I in an improv session? Ako, this may seem pilit or strange, but is there any intersection with your specialty, Dr. Allyn, gastroenterologist, and improv? Is there
Yeah.
anything at all?
Yes, actually, I was gonna add to Dr.
Yeah.
Anna, because within the practice of gastroenterology, we also have what we call the functional disorders. These are the disorders in the GI tract where there's nothing structurally wrong, but it is the perception of the organs of pain or stimuli that are not supposed to be painful, but can be experienced as discomfort. And these are actually the more problematic illnesses because they tend to be chronic, meaning they go on for long periods of time, they keep coming back, and there are no specific cures for them. Usually what we do is we control the symptoms so they don't interfere with daily life. And
Like,
it's already a
sorry,
well-acknowledged.
sorry.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I'm so intrigued. Like what? Like, sorry.
Like, for example, I'm sure we've all had this acid reflux or gastroesophageal reflux disorder. So
Okay.
functional disorders like that have been found, and they're in textbooks already, so it's a well accepted fact that they tend to correlate with emotional states
Mhm.
or history of trauma, for example. And the treatments for these illnesses are usually insufficient because the underlying pathology hasn't been discovered yet. But part of the treatment, if you look at the algorithm for treatment of GERD, if the initial treatments for acid, etc., don't work, part of that would be cognitive therapy. And I think this is probably where improv might later on help to add to the armamentarium of the people involved in the treatment of such disease. In fact, for me, when I have GERD patients for whom the initial treatment is no longer working, I would ask for help from neurologists or psychiatrists, because you do have to address also, for example, the anxiety aspect of the illness. So there's actually a good intersection between gastroenterology and the benefits of improv. And that's just one illness. So there's a lot of illnesses within gastroenterology that play into such a mechanism.
Wow, I'm absolutely blown away because I was on the verge of making a joke na when when people say before improvising na nasusuka ako or sorry for my French, natatae ako. Natatae ako sa kaba, etc. So medyo may truth 'yon.
Yes, actually, yes. For example, yeah, yung nasusuka or natatae, these are actually manifestations of the GI tract being in such a heightened state of being stimulated that when you're anxious or you're stressed, they tend to overact. That's why may feeling na natatae. Yeah. So it's actually not just in your head, it's also in your gut.
Yeah, oh my God. So ako totally frivolous question. So does no, maybe you can't answer this, Dr. Anna. I was gonna say, meron ka na bang pasyente who came to you because the symptoms were gut and sought
Um,
psychological
Actually,
intervention?
yes. I was nodding a lot because sabi ko nga, this is such an interesting group I found myself in. Kasi, di ba, traditionally, they say mental health is in the brain. And recently, now,
Yeah.
actually, all the research is saying it's in the gut. Mental health is in the gut. So depression can be very much affected by microbiome imbalances. Kasi and vice versa, right? If there's stress or
Oh,
a
goodness.
problem, the the gut balance just haywire, even if you eat the same foods. So definitely the three of us have very, so I might get their numbers for referrals. I
Sure.
do I
Sure.
do get a lot of people with GERD, and then on the neuro side, right? A lot of migraines, headaches, sort of pains that, as you said, are tend to be chronic, tend to be not seen in an MRI or an imaging, right? And then you realize, maybe yung nga, the pathology lies in, their distress in itself. So definitely, definitely connected siya. And yeah, not just that, kasi since this is the other specializations also, right? Like any inflammatory disease is actually very much connected with mental health. So I always, even though I'm not a medical doctor, I make sure they get checked up first medically. Because if there are any inflammatory issues, autoimmune disorders, chronic conditions and illnesses, like pain, particularly, if there's any chronic pain issues, lahat yan actually may connection, and it impacts the way they experience pain. Because that's really what it is, right? That's the interaction.
It,
How do they experience pain? If they experience pain in a yes and, well, it's my body. And of course, if I eat that, there will come this pain, right? Pero if they don't accept it and they're like, but wait, what's wrong with me? Why am I feeling this, right? Why am I getting these feelings? And then that exacerbates. And so, siguro if I hope it's not an overreach kasi we don't do improv itself. Although sabi ko nga, please, I'd love a collaboration. Maybe explore some, intersections here. We do call it acceptance therapy, radical acceptance. So with chronic pains, chronic illnesses, terminal illnesses, we really focus on how to accept the situation as it is, because then, as Dr. Allyn wonderfully explained, once they kind of interpret their pain, their discomfort, no, it's okay. It's fact of life. It's part of living. It's worth. It's the price of admission for lechon. So it's okay. I will get out
you
about
know
it.
me so well. You know me so well.
Yeah, and then their experience of pain goes down to a manageable level, or ends up making them realize, wait, maybe the price of admission is too much. Mag-ipon muna ako. And then behavioral change can
Okay.
happen, right? And then they start listening to their doctors and get practice the nutritional advice. So, ay nako, every intersection possible. It's definitely there.
And even the audience shares in it. Sabi ni Ariel, nakakakilig ang dugtungan ng mga kwento ng guest doctors tungkol sa bodily and mental reactions sa kaba at related feelings. It's an insightful Sunday hashtag. We're down to our last 5 minutes with our wonderful, wonderful guests. Imagine naka 1 hour na tayo. And we're gonna give the audience a chance um, to ask maybe one or two more questions before we let them go. I think we're all in agreement on how insightful and how wonderful all the intersections and the insights have been. Jenica says, mental health is in the gut. I had a traumatic experience years ago. I succeeded with burying it in my head, but I couldn't eat at all for weeks. Then my psychologist told me that we can fool our brains, but we can't fool our bodies. I was later diagnosed with depression. Holy cow. And then Monica says, of course, we have experiences with stress eating, and nandyan rin yung nasusuka, gag reflex, habol hininga, oh my God. All of those are really related to mental and gut issues. And of course, I cannot end the show without saying, okay ka ba tiyan? And that's how we're all tied together. Another comment from Monica, I feel so smart already just listening to this panel. While we're waiting I'm going to give a chance for one more question before we let everyone go. But we're going to see if the promise knocks. May palatin pa tayo from Sydney Mapa. Mensa sane in corpore sano. O, anong ibig sabihin yan, Alin?
Parang ano to,
Something mind, something
yung sa
body.
improv game.
Yeah, a sound mind in a sound body. Okay. So that is our sound mind in a sound body. And that is actually our inspiration. Oh, wait. Can you hear this at all? No, no. Hold on. Let me just fix this because there is demand that we cannot end this episode without a rap from Doc Rob and Doc Adi. I am just going to before that, parang we'll lead it out this way. Thank you so much to all our guests today, Doc Rob, Rob Sarmiento, neurologist. If they want to get their minds checked, where can they find you?
Right now, I'm doing physical or face-to-face consults here in Bicol. But if you have any questions about the brain, the mind, and the spine or the nerves, just message me.
All right. For Dr. Allyn?
Yes, I'm actually based in Pangasinan, so I cater to my kababayans here. I don't actually have an online platform at the moment, so for now, I am a Pangasinan-based doctor. But I do have a messenger, so in case people, especially in the TWI community, may have gastro-related concerns, maybe they can just send me a message also.
Where are you in Pangasinan? Kasi we're provincial neighbors.
Yes, actually, I'm in San Carlos City, which is around 30
Okay.
minutes away from Dagupan. Yes.
Okay, very cool. And finally, Doc Anna?
Don't find me.
Don't find you.
Sorry. No,
But if
because
they want more of you, yeah.
yes. No, only because our we're all booked. Unfortunately, I think Dr. Allyn alluded to that, right? Mental health practitioners are booked. However, please, if you'd like to, if you're something about our conversation, right, made you realize, oh, that might be mental health, or there might be some connection. I recently just became part of We Thrive. So We Thrive is an online clinic. So that I have a lot of wonderful colleagues there, myself included. So I think they'll be happy and surprised that I plugged them. And We Thrive is completely online. So that's why. So it's really accessible. I think, let me find it. So you can just, look, email them at clinic.wethrive@gmail.com. So both children and adults, right? And they're all very neuro and developmentally trained. So definitely these intersections that we're talking about, they will definitely be able to help you with that.
All right, and I will second that because our family, we are also a client of We Thrive. And I highly, highly, highly recommend them if you need any interventions with that. So thank you so much for our guests. And we cannot end this without having a wrap. Can you hear this, my homies? Hold on. Can you hear the beat, Doc Rob,
Yes.
Doc Allyn?
Yeah.
We're gonna take this episode away with a rap, and our prompt is mens sane corpore sane. What that means is sound mind in a sound body. You gotta tell that to me. Today we've talked about all the things in the brain and the gut. I'm gonna pass the microphone on to the doctors in the room. All the way in Bicol, in the place called Naga City, N to the A to the G to the A. Rob Sarmiento, take it away.
Hi everybody! Kailangan mo ba ng brain? Kasi andito ang doktor na doon nagtitrain. You just have to have a sound body because that's gonna make you very happy. Kailangan mo ba ng consult? Kasi your health, I'm gonna positively catapult. Go Alin Longboy.
Much has been said, but one thing I got is that mental health is in the gut. So take care of your health because, like they say, health is wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you everyone for tuning in. This is Eye to Eye. My name is Gabe Mercado. Thank you so much, Rob Sarmiento, Alin Lomboy, Anna Tuazon. Yeah. Great conversations. Have a great
Thank
Sunday,
you.
everyone.
Good day.
Good day.